Square Garden. There's a UFC fight in your hometown, gentlemen. So fired up. Stephen A.
About time, by the way.
Right? Thank you. Is McGregor...
About time.
Right?
About time. Long overdue.
Exactly. Is McGregor the most interesting man in sports?
To me, he is. I mean, when you think about, listen, there are times when he's a bit extreme. Would I like him to be a bit classier, a bit more professional? At times, absolutely. No question about it. But I'm a big fan of his nevertheless. And the reason why is that he backs up what he says for the most part. He's not a guy that talks the talk and then all of a sudden he gets in the octagon and he's timid. He goes up in there to finish you. And his inability to finish Nate Diaz, losing to him the first time, beating him the second time. I mean, to me, I became an even bigger fan of his after the loss because this guy hit Nate with everything, and Nate just kept coming. He's a modern-day Rocky Balboa, for crying out loud. Nate just kept coming and finished him off with that chokehold to get it done in their first match. And what does McGregor do? He gets a rematch. And mind you, he was fighting at 145, moves up to 170 to fight Nate Diaz, loses, then comes back, zones in, and then beats him. And by the way, before he beat him in the second match, when he lost the first match, he was very classy in defeat. He didn't make any excuses. He said he lost fair and square. There were things that he could have done differently. Came back, did it, avenged the loss, and now he's moved forward. There's a lot of things that, you know, you would prefer not to see because you never know. It is sports. The kids are watching. There's no question about that. I'm certainly not condoning that, Max. But at the same time, when you talk about a guy being box office, it's their willingness to talk the talk and then walk the walk. I'm not comparing his act to that of Ali's because obviously Ali was living in a different time. The country was in a different place. We had a lot of different problems. Ali was a member of the Nation of Islam. He was taking on civil rights. You know, he was addressing all of these different things.
Refused induction into the armed services.
Of course. So he was taking on challenges that were far more important and substantive than what, you know, stuff coming out of McGregor's mouth. But there's something to be said about willing to put yourself in the line of fire, knowing that everybody's going to have a bullseye coming in your direction. Not only do you accept it, you invite it, you embrace it, and then you live up to it when it's called upon you to perform. That's McGregor. And that's
by
why
the way,
I find him to be the most interesting.
In a comparison with Ali, Ali was the first to do that, and Ali became the greatest heavyweight champion who ever lived, right? So, of course, we're talking about different levels. But let me just say, before I even answer who the answer is, it's not McGregor. But that doesn't mean I don't find McGregor interesting. Conor McGregor is not only interesting, he is a man. Like, this guy, last-minute substitute, I have to move up in weight to fight him? Sure. Oh, lose the fight? Immediate rematch and win. Conor McGregor, in terms of the way he comports himself as a fighter in the octagon, is exactly what you want. He's a, you know, you can't say enough good things. And he's interesting out. If your test to who's the most interesting man in sports is he's talking and someone else is talking, who are you watching? McGregor wins that. But I don't think the most interesting man in sports is just about histrionics or who can get you to flip the channel for 30 seconds. I think it's the whole package. And even though this sounds like an obvious or boring answer, I think the answer has to be LeBron James. This is a man who had more attention on him since the age of 16, really than any other athlete in the world, who became the greatest athlete in the world and a major media and he's a major mogul at this point, who never allowed his talent to isolate him, but instead used it to bring everyone along with him on the journey, who, while he's becoming this corporate mogul, is not afraid to stand up and show leadership for social issues, who deserved his choking reputation by having one of the greatest chokes in the history of American sports in that finals against the Mavericks and then somehow overcome it, to have one of the greatest clutch performances in the history of American sports against that juggernaut last year, and is now getting ready to try to rewrite the record books by beating an even better version, potentially, of that juggernaut last year. I think, and who, by the way, is interesting to listen to. Never went to college, and everything he says seems to be smart and well thought out. I think the answer is, I know it's a boring answer. He's not over the top. I think the answer is LeBron James.
Well, you just answered the question and showed why you're wrong, because it's an oxymoron. You can't be boring and the most interesting all at the same time.
It's a boring answer.
LeBron
He's
James,
not boring.
Listen to what I'm saying. The point is that everything you just said about LeBron James is absolutely accurate. The problem is we've known that for years now. The only thing we don't know about LeBron James is whether or not he's going to beat the Golden State Warriors. Everything else that you've said about him, we've known for years. So we've grown accustomed to it. It's not his fault. His greatness is solidified. Him being a conscientious observer is solidified. His being a business mogul is solidified. We've known all of this about him for years. So when you've known something about somebody for years now, you're able to take it for granted. And as a result, the words most interesting doesn't necessarily apply because there's no suspense to that. That's all I'm saying.
How about this?
He
empowered the players to create their own super teams for good or bad. That's interesting. He then chooses to go back home, delivers the championship. We sell sports as narrative. It's just story, right?
You're not thinking about LeBron when you're thinking about Kevin Durant going to Golden State.
You're
not really thinking about that.
In fact, we discussed it that way. We need to sell sport as story. That's what we do. We sell it as story. You need to be invested in the characters. No one has more emotional investment from the fans than LeBron James. No one's story is known as well
LeBron
as
was in the
LeBron
UFC,
James.
Hold on, whoa. That's a misnomer. If LeBron was exactly everything that you said, but he was the UFC and McGregor was in the NBA, what do you think it would be? You can't compare the two in that regard.
Why?
You can't bring up because it's the NBA versus the UFC.
Right. And at this moment, maybe it won't always be this way, but at this moment, the NBA has the better athletes. Like, LeBron James is the greatest athlete in the world. No one even really disputes that. That automatically makes him interesting.
Right.
But then when you add everything else I just mentioned and you know what's at stake for him, you're simply more invested, interested in his story than anyone else's.
One other thing that I thought was
LeBron James.
Go ahead,
LeBron James is accomplished. LeBron James is accomplished.
Is he not interested?
When you bring up the word interesting and whatever, when you bring up the word interesting and everything, you're applying intrigue to some degree. And I'm saying to you, with LeBron, other than him going up against Golden State, there's very little in the way of intrigue. Everything else, he has already accomplished and established. We can take it for granted now.
If the loudest, most histrionic was interesting, you'd be more interesting than me. Think of how ridiculous that is.
Well, I'm more interested in you for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
Just two of them.
Well, I also thought it was interesting, Fashion Police, that he channeled Joe Frazier. He wore the exact same outfit. Did you guys notice that before his MSG fight against Muhammad Ali? The white mink, the red turtleneck.
McGregor is a bad dude. Don't get me wrong. He is quite interesting.
He knows his history because that was back in 1974. I can't wait for this fight. So excited. Must see. And I hope we'll be talking about it on Monday. But we also have something to talk about. Yep, no question. Big news for our show. We are moving from ESPN 2 to ESPN starting Tuesday, January 3rd. The show will still be at the same time, 10 to 12 Eastern. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope that you will all make the move with us. Right, gentlemen?
Of course.
Yes.
Years in the making.
Yep.
Years in the making. Finally. Because I'm here to confess. I've begged for a while. The bosses came through for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're looking forward to
happy.
it. The Dak Attack makes a stop in Pittsburgh this weekend when the 7-1 Cowboys face the struggling Steelers. Not only does the Cowboys rookie quarterback have America's team at the top of the NFC at the midway point, but he is second in the NFL in QBR, only trailing one Tom Brady. Will, should Dak be considered for MVP?
Is this where I gain my credibility or lose my fans here? No, Dak should not be considered for the MVP.
Will, both of your fans just said you lost it.
And here's why. This is how objective I am. I can
and that was me and Molly.
Max, I never thought you were a fan. Here's why. Okay, I think the most valuable player award, number one, should not go to the best player on the best team. That's nonsense. It shouldn't go to the guy putting up the best statistical year as well. That's why Matt Ryan's not the MVP. These are the two questions I think you have to ask when analyzing who an MVP is. Number one, who is most responsible for their team's situation? For the Cowboys, in that case, it would be 7-1. And the answer is, by the way, Dak Prescott. The only problem is that's not the only question. The second question is, if you took him off the team and placed him on another team, would he drastically change the fortunes of that team? This is why LeBron James is the MVP every year in basketball, because whichever team you put him on, he changes the fortunes of that team the most drastically. And Dak going to another team does not drastically change the fortunes of the Cleveland Browns, or for that matter, the New England Patriots. The MVP, by that analysis, mine, which I think is the correct one, is Tom Brady. Tom Brady is the closest we have to a man who can change the fortunes of whatever team he is on. He is, yes, I understand how well the Patriots played without him. But have you noticed it, Max? Have you noticed they are winning by 11 points in every game he's played since then? It's not even close how much he is blowing out of points.
Two things you're missing there. One, marginal utility. You don't need to win by 11 points. You just need to win. So, two, Tom Brady's played in half the games. So, pretty tough to make up 50% of the games so far, 50% of the value that someone else had when you just didn't have it. By the way, there's actually another argument. You assumed that Tom Brady would do this on every other team. We've never seen him without Bill Belichick. We have seen the Patriots without Tom Brady. They're pretty good. They're almost not quite as good. They win almost as many games. Here's the argument for Dak Prescott. I can't believe that you are arguing against him. Maybe it's Will that's the Jerry Jones.
Well, I am
Stephen A. Smith,
I am the Tony Romo.
The Tony Romo guy. Here's the thing about Dak Prescott. Sure, if you took him out from behind that offensive line and threw him somewhere else, sure. Same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. That offensive line is a lot to do with why they're good. And sure, you mentioned people say he's leaving touchdowns on the field. The thing is, he's winning. All he can do is play those games. And then what kind of numbers is he putting up? He is elite in QBR. Only Tom Brady is ahead of him. Expected points added. He's top 3. And so how can one player who's ahead of him, who's played in half the games that he's played in, at this point be ahead of him in the MVP talk? To your other point about taking him off the team and dropping him somewhere else, yes, that's why he wouldn't get my vote as MVP right now. But he's certainly in the conversation. If I had to vote, I'd vote for Matt Ryan. But Dak Prescott is certainly in the conversation.
Dak Prescott is a rookie 4th-round pick who's got 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, has thrown for over 2,000 yards, is completing 66% of his passes, which are numbers that will rival Russell Wilson right now. And more importantly, he's working for a team and producing for a team that has no identity on the defensive side of the ball. They are tied for the best record in football. And oh, by the way, in the process of all of that, we must take history into consideration. Because if we're going to look, Will, at the Tom Brady's of the world and the LeBron James of the world and say, no matter what team they go to, this is what they do and this is what they produce, et cetera, even though that isn't applicable to Tom Brady because, like Max Kellerman said, he's only played for one coach and one franchise in his career. The bottom line is if you're going to take that into consideration, why not take this into consideration? With the exception of the 2014 season, in which the Dallas Cowboys went 12-4, won a wild card playoff game, lost in the divisional playoff game to the Green Bay Packers in 2014. With the exception of that, what have they done in the career of Tony Romo? Pretty close to nothing. We're looking at records of 9-7. In 2009, they won 11-5 before losing a divisional playoff game. After that, they were 6-10, and then 8-8 for 3 consecutive years. And last year, they were 4-12, primarily due to the injury of Tony Romo, no less. But the bottom line is that from an historical perspective, we look at the Dallas Cowboys. They've been a model of ineptitude. They haven't been that impressive, as we all know. They haven't won a Super Bowl in so many years, okay? You've got hype machine personified in Jerry Jones, but really nothing else. And then Dak Prescott comes along and Ezekiel Elliott comes along with that massive offensive line, no doubt, and here they are producing. We're looking at a Dak Prescott with his athleticism. We're looking at the young lion that he is, the durability. We also have to juxtapose that to a Tony Romo that's had about 4 back injuries in the last 2.5 years, whose health is suspect and highly questionable. You look at all of those different things, and Dak Prescott, able to take the reins, keep the team under control, keep the turnovers at a minimum, and producing the way that he is he the favorite? Absolutely not. But is he an MVP candidate, and should he be an MVP candidate? He absolutely should.
I'm perfectly happy and willing to consider Dak Prescott for an MVP. I mean, I am a fan after all, but I don't think Dak Prescott is the best quarterback on his own roster. I don't think he's the best quarterback on the sidelines for the Dallas Cowboys.
I think we know that because he's the only one that's been quarterbacking for them. Where the hell is Tony Romo been? He's on the sideline. How can he be a comparison right now?
By the way, that's another point I'd like to piggyback. Will, think about that for a second. He hasn't gotten into a game, and he's ready now, and he ain't going to get in anytime soon if Dak keeps playing like this. What does that tell you? Because you and I are on the same page about this. Tony Romo is an excellent quarterback, and Dak has taken his job at the moment. Not just, Romo's ready to play. He ain't the quarterback.
Romo's not ready to play. He's not suiting out this week. He's not going to be in pads on the Cowboys sideline this week.
Why do you think that is?
And I will tell you, I've said it on this show, and I'll say it again, Tony Romo will be starting for the Dallas Cowboys before this whole song is done being sung.
Know what the medical staff said about Tony Romo's injury? He has a bad case of the Dak Prescotts right now. Otherwise, he checks out fine, except they x-rayed him and they found he has the Dak Prescotts. Can't get back on the field.
One of the biggest insults I receive on this show, besides being ganged up on consistently, is that I don't watch the show enough, that I'm not a fan. It tends to come from one corner in particular. But I do watch.
It's the only corner that matters.
Shots fired.
The only corner that matters.
Oh, don't get salty just because I win all the debates.
Let him go. Let him go.
You know what I'm saying? That's why Max doesn't matter, because he keeps lying to the American public about winning debates. And by the way, don't you sit up here with your little pity party self, because you instigate debates and force us to come against you because you foolishly try to come at us. If you didn't bother us, we wouldn't come back at you.
Let me tell you something.
You bring it on yourself. You bring it on yourself.
There's no pity party. I love this. I love taking you all on at the same time. It's like I'm like a kung fu master.
They're ganging up on me.
Come in here.
Exactly what I think. Bruce Lee, Kung Fu Master. Let's hear what Twitter thinks. Let's check our timeline. So we asked you guys if who's the Cowboys MVP at this point this season, and 51% say it's Dak. How do we feel about that?
What'd they say? Of the Cowboys?
51% say it's Dak, yes, over Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, I'd say that's pretty close. We've got a lot of close votes this week, Molly. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to end up.
Oh, please, football gods, let the Cowboys.
I'll tell you this.
Let the Cowboys lose to the Giants at MetLife and let the Giants take over first place.
I thought it would have been more Zeke.
I love Dak. I do think by the one analysis, if you took one player off that Cowboys squad and put him on another, who's going to succeed? It is Zeke.
Yep.
You put Zeke on another squad, he's still lighting it up.
No question. Gentlemen, you got anything to add there? We ready to move on?
Dak can make a lot of teams better, too. He's really good.
Will is wrong. I like Ezekiel Elliott a lot, especially since week 1 or 2. He's been an absolute stud. But if he had a weak offensive line, that would not be the case. He's no Barry Sanders. The guys that you could say, in terms of the level of production, elusivity is a really, really big deal for a running back that can do anything, anywhere. But when you're a powerful, violent runner, even though you hit gaps quickly and you break tackles, the reality is that if you have a suspect offensive line, there is no way on earth that a running back like Ezekiel Elliott would do what he has done.
Know who the MVP of the Cowboys is?
Has a lot to do with
MVP of the Cowboys is Stephen Jones.
I knew you were going to. I know
what it is?
well now. Well.